I have extra pens too.
Oh, wonderful.
I missed the E in my last name. Oh, you brought yours up. You were smart.
It was like 8 kids with multiple.
Whoops. Perfect stuff.
Oh, like a face. Yeah. Yeah, I get it.
I want to apologize in advance. I have to leave a little early because I got to take my wife to a doctor's appointment.
Okay, cool.
We just had a communication mix-up.
Yeah.
I don't like to leave your presentation early.
I believe you've been in one of our presentations before.
I'm Charlie Greenman.
Andre Koen.
Yeah, I really wanted to see you again.
Oh, okay.
It's so good that you came back.
Yeah. I'm glad to be invited.
Yes.
You know, that's the ultimate honor, right?
Well, you have a lot to offer.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Hello.
Yeah, I know. I wanted to come back.
Oh, there it is.
It would be like Tina was made not quite. Okay.
Yeah, this is the sign-in sheet.
Wonderful.
Here's a sign machine, sir.
Good.
Yeah,
Doing today.
not too bad. Not too bad. I woke up, I'm breathing. Looking good.
That was a good thing.
That's all. It helps make things better, right? It helps make things better.
Yeah.
Here's an additional chair. You're welcome. I feel like I'm at my grandma's house. This is also a dining room table, a dining room chair. Right? So. So everyone signed in so you can get credit, is that correct? Okay, cool. Just want to make sure.
Thank you.
No problem. This is magic will happen. I love it when you have to bring in extra chairs, right?
Yeah.
So that's always cool. I also like it when I'm invited back places. Right? That's the real testament, right? So
Oh, it says.
I have. I used to do MSSA. Anyone go to MSSA? So I was doing that. I did that for like 5 years straight, and when I started seeing people quoting me while I'm giving my presentation, I said, you know what, maybe I should take a break. Right, their lips are moving while my lips are moving. We're saying the same thing. I'm like, I might need to take a break and develop some new stuff. So, so this next year, I plan to at least apply to present. So we'll see what happens. And that kind of stuff. And I don't know if any of you are on like our mailing list or anything like that, but we offer CEUs for continuing education credits through the Board of Social Work, the Board of Behavior, and something health as well, and for licenses, so LEDC and all sorts of stuff. So cool. Well, it looks like. Oh, well, we got 3 minutes, so we can keep talking. So let's, in Minnesota, what do we talk about? What do we usually talk about? You said Trump? Is it? No. I was just joking. You said? Did you say religion? You said religion? Is that what you said? Right? Yeah. Taxes. Yeah. No. State fair is just crazy this year. Like, I mean, not crazy. I don't want to use the word crazy. It is just unbelievable how many people are going to the fair. I was thinking about it, but I have a thing about big crowds, so I think I'm staying away. Right? Or yeah. Late is worse for me because then people start acting really goofy. So in previous years, I would go early in the morning, like 6, 7, when the gates open, do my breakfast thing. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So, is there anyone here who doesn't have a pen or pencil? Lapis, la pluma? No. Okay. Okay. So everyone has something to write with. So everyone has something to write with, is that right? Okay, cool.
No problem.
Hello.
Thank you.
Cool.
Just put Elizabeth on the floor.
Oh yeah,
I'll take all you guys to lift me up.
nobody sits on the floor if they don't have to. I mean, unless they want to.
That's true.
Bionics, huh?
Yeah.
$6 million, huh? Wow. So, yeah, back to Trump. You guys are, no, I'm joking. She's like, ooh, let's stay away from that. So, no, I'm excited to be here. I'm glad to be able to present and be with my colleagues, right? Be with my colleagues. The way I approach. How many of you have been in a presentation that I've done before? Okay, cool. I can keep most of my same jokes. That's cool. The way that I really approach diversity, equity, and inclusion work is really approaching it from 2 points of view. One is kind of a mental health model, as well as an anthropological approach to looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion. Right. So anthropology is the study of what? People and their culture. Right. So people and culture. And so, so as I get older, I know that I'm right. I know that, right? I say that to my wife all the time, right? And she doesn't always agree how right I am, but but I'm right. However, what I have found in terms of relating to people, working with people, my rightness doesn't matter as much as my effectiveness matters. Right? So I can be right about things and not be effective. I can be right and not be effective. I tried to do a little wife joke on the side there, you know, but that's a demonstration of that, right? So, you know, in my relationship, I can be right. But if I actually want to get things done in a relationship that I care about, that I want to maintain, that I want to show respect and dignity and want to receive respect and dignity from the other partner, I have to look at what it means to be effective. So that's really the approach that we're going to take with this lesson, if you will. And, you know, kind of words to live by, right? Do you call people colored people or people of color, right? What do you call non-binary people? What do you call them? What do you call people who are they undocumented immigrants or illegal immigrants, right? So what do you call people? The words you live by, right? So we'll talk about that in just a second. So I have a PowerPoint. I have handouts for you. I have a couple of activities that we'll do as well. So I am well prepared for this particular engagement, for our conversation. But as important as I think the agenda that I have is important, I also am interested in hearing what you would also like to talk about. So are there issues, are there concepts that you are hoping we might talk about or we might deal with today in the 2 hours that we have? Is there anything that you're like, I hope we talk about this, or I want to talk about this? I'm just going to jot some of those things down. Yes?
Well, I'm always, part of the reason I'm here is because I know that there are things about the way that I think and the way that I judge and the way that I name that interfere with my connecting with people and with psychotherapists. So I want to be able to do that as effectively as possible.
Okay. Let it be effective. Other thoughts? Yes.
I think that working with the adolescents and the encounters with the popular culture and the kind of idea that what activities is good for the gander kind of mentality, and I think we're encountering more and more lately of words being used, where it's my word, not your word, and conflict arising constantly, and
You're talking about the N-word, right? Is that one of the words, or is there another? Okay.
We've got other things like just this week we had an incident where a book was held up during a volunteer activity, the book of Women's Slaves, and the child of color said to take a child to be a Caucasian child, it was for people that did this or something, you know, everything got a little bit tense. It was intended to be funny, time or place, history lesson,
Right.
all of those things had to take place. Words.
Yeah.
How we choose to use them.
Yeah.
We use them around.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you for the clarity. Yes.
Okay, so as an immigrant, is the language to speak to indigenous people, especially in America, is figuring out what the pronouncing or what words to use.
Okay. Other.
So I'm not quite sure how to word this, but so I guess as a Caucasian woman, I am always looking for ways that I can be more of an ally to people of color and to diverse populations, and just want to know the most effective ways that I can help people of all different backgrounds.
Okay.
And gain and develop trust.
Yep.
Because even though I might not have experienced what they experienced, I am still able to, trust them.
So if you don't mind, because I can see you're really struggling with that, right? How have people earned or gained your trust? What are ways in which trust has been gained for you?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I'd be okay with it, but I feel like there's always room for improvement.
Yep, I'm not talking about this racial stuff. I'm not talking about any of that stuff. I'm just talking about general, regular, just trust. How does trust, how have people earned your trust?
Well, I mean, starting off, having conversations with clients, building rapport, kind of talking about, what they like to do for fun.
I'm not even talking about clients. I mean, just, and this is for everybody. So how does trust get built?
Honesty.
So honesty, what does that mean? Honesty.
They do what they say.
Consistency.
They do what they say.
Action, they do what they say, they follow through. Trust is, how is trust violated? The opposite of all those other things, right? So lies, inconsistency, blah, 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 blah. So this is one, and I'm not picking on you by any means, but this is for all of us, right? So I consider myself to be, and I used to call myself an ally, right? I'm an ally for women. Yeah. What I didn't recognize was I grew up in a misogynistic society, so that misogyny is a part of me, so I have to keep fighting that, right? I gotta fight it. And so I was calling myself an ally, right? And then I thought about Dr. Dre. You guys know Dr. Dre? Right? You break your arm, you go to the emergency room, and Dr. Dre comes in a lab coat to fix your arm. What do you say? Can I get your autograph? Can I get your autograph? No. He's like, I'm going to do this procedure, and I'm going to fix your arm. And what is, after you get over the starstruckness stuff, when you get to the reality of him fixing your arm, what do you say about that? Dude, who else is calling you a doctor, right? What are your qualifications? So I can say I am an ally, but who else calls me an ally? And if nobody else is calling me an ally, I'm suspect, right? So if there is another guy in there whose name is Dr. Andre, and he's got MD behind it, and he went to the University of Minnesota and did residency and blah, blah, blah. When he comes in to do the procedure, how do you feel about that? You feel better, right? Why? Because there are people who support him as that role, right? So oftentimes, so that's what I want us to think about. So ally may be something we strive for, and I don't know the right language for that, but I do know if I call myself an ally and nobody else calls me an ally, I'm suspect at best. Right? So that's something to think about. Yes?
One thing I wanted to include is maybe who the people that came up with the title of what they call people.
Yeah.
For example, I refer to white people as white people, not Caucasian, because that was a strategic title, but because of the topic knowledge. So I like to figure out or talk about why these certain groups, minority groups, immigrant groups, they're labeled as African American, Native American, all those things. So that's also important.
Yeah. So I didn't include that in my slides, but I will mention this, that the hunter always tells the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? The hunter tells the story. And so when we talk about this idea of, the term is right at the tip of my tongue, power of definition, right? When you have the power to define something, that's a monumental task. I mean, it's not even a monumental task, but it has huge ramifications when you get to define stuff, right? So, so just recognize that. I will touch on that a little bit, probably not as in depth as I would in another session that if you invite me back for, I'd be more than happy to go into. Right? This is what I will, to that, to give a clue to where I might go with that, I will say this, that there are no Hispanics in Mexico. There are no Hispanics in Mexico, or in Guatemala, or in Belize. There are no Hispanics. Where do Hispanics reside? In the United States. They only become Hispanic when they're in the United States. There's no other place where they are Hispanic but in the United States, right? So that will give you a clue to some other stuff, right? But so I'll try to hit some of that. Anything? Okay. So, yes.
Curious too about kind of some of the development of vernacular, especially among adolescents, and how to support them as they're creating their own thinking on their identity and engaging with their peers, and the role that I play in that as a therapist, as a white woman, especially when I'm working with students of color.
Yep.
And wanting to help support them in their development of their identity, but also help them understand the context that they're walking from.
Yeah. Now I'm thinking there was a slide I wanted to put in, and maybe at some kind of break I'll go in and slip that in, particularly around binary and non-binary gender identities, right? So how do we support those and that kind of stuff? So I will address that, and I have a slide that I'll try to find it and plug it in. So cool, thank you for that. Yeah. All right, cool. Did you have something else? Okay, you breathe.
I will raise my hand.
Oh, okay, cool. So
Way high.
Yeah. So when I taught high school, middle school, anytime somebody would breathe, I'd jump on them, like, because you'll get those kind of opportunities at middle school very often, right? So you see something come on their face, and with my college students, they're too cool for school, So then I'm forcing conversations, as I just said. So cool. Were there things that people were like, I do not want to talk about this. If I talk about this one more time, my head is going to explode. Like, Trump. I do not. Yeah. Trump. Okay, Trump. We'll get some newspaper. Clean up the police in general. Okay, cool. It's funny. I just to not talk about what you don't want to talk about. I just did a session yesterday with I have in 2 more sessions with the Chiefs Association. So all the police chiefs in the state of Minnesota, and there's lots of work to do, but also know that they want to do better. They want to do better. So I'm gonna help them do better. So one of the comments, and I don't think any of them would mind me saying this, was we can't hire. So let me back up. So someone in the session said, Black Lives Matter has made it very difficult for us to hire people of color in our police forces. And I kind of looked. It's like, okay, Black Lives Matter is why you can't hire people of color to your and so I just asked a question. I said, before Black Lives Matter, before Eric Gardner, before Michael Brown, did you have this problem? And they said, yeah. So, okay. Let's move on, right? So they do want to do better. So we won't talk about them in detail, but that was that. So we have Trump and we have the police. Anything else that I have to strike from my presentation before we get there?
Well, yeah. I'm going to be careful about saying this, but Trump he's the president of the United States. He's a person, and he represents a whole ideology, and it bothers me that it's focused on one individual. So that bothers me.
Right. So yeah, we'll talk. We'll not talk about that later. So there's that. So I think I got all that stuff. So just some any other things that people don't want to talk about. Immigration policies, religion. Okay.
Oh my God, okay. I'm sorry, I just have to bring this up.
Yeah.
Because they will probably come up. Black on black crime. That, to me, I'm just like, and actually if it comes up, I don't have a problem addressing it.
No.
But
it will come up, but we can just deal with it right now, right? So black on black crime. How many people have heard of that? Black on black crime. When people say that, what is that? What does that mean? Well, what do they mean by that?
They're attempting to say black people kill themselves and you guys don't worry about them killing themselves.
Right.
But actually, in every society, majority of the time people attack people that look like their own people. Like, meaning, I will say, depending on what neighborhood, what city, you might be, if I live in a predominantly white neighborhood and I was white, it's gonna be a white person that attacks me.
So I want to build off of what you said, and I want to give you just a tad bit of language change that will give you laser beam focus, right? Proximity. Proximity. People typically commit crimes in proximity, right? So if the people I'm closest to are more likely to be victims of crime than the people that are far away from me, right? So when we say black on black crime, it's a misnomer because it's actually proximity. They're proximity crimes because there is white on white crime, right? So we don't say that there is brown on brown crime, Hispanic on Hispanic crime. I mean, all that stuff happens in proximity. So when we think about that or we hear about that, we should be thinking about proximity of the crime and not the so-called color or even the geographic region of that particular crime. But the geographic region also plays into proximity, right? So another example or another word picture, if you want to kind of use this or think about this, is the difference between free-range chickens and caged raised or traditionally raised chickens, right? What are the so organically or free-range chickens are more expensive than conventional chickens, right? Anybody done agriculture stuff? Anybody bought any chickens at the grocery store? Right? Are those? Is that true that those organic chickens are more expensive? Does anybody know why they're more expensive?
Supposedly they have a better life, that they're treated less humanely.
We're treating chickens more humanely.
That's how they are marketed.
Right? Yeah, that's how they're marketed,
that's
right?
How we are marketed, or
how they market to us, right? So those things. So they have open spaces. They have, supposedly, right, a better lifestyle. And what is so conventionally raised chickens are very cheap, right? And what are their conditions like? What are their living conditions? Close borders, minimal survival tools, injected with hormones and drugs, right? To, in some cases, keep them sedated because chickens will cannibalize each other, right? Maybe they could have, right? So we can start to see some, right? We can see some parallels to some of our human conditions, right? When we think about who has privilege and who doesn't have privilege, right? However, what is the function of both of those chickens? To be eaten. So whether they have privilege or whether they don't have privilege, whether it's chicken on chicken crime, right, or not, they're all made to be a part of the system that is designed to consume them, right? And I would say the same might be true for us. If we're not careful, if we're not mindful, we can think or pretend that we have privileges, but what do those privileges actually get us, right? And so we'll talk about that. And so no, I agree with you that there is no black on black crime, that these are proximity crimes, and that those places matter. And if we look at those places, then that explains a lot of what's happening in those environments, right? So because we can treat chickens more humanely, but can we treat humans more humanely? And I believe that poverty is inhumane, but we'll talk about that too. All right, cool. So just a few things about me, and then we'll move on to today's discussion. So my dad was a Black Panther in the 60s. Was called by God to become an evangelical pastor, and so I have lots of social leanings. I also have kind of the spiritual nurturing and upbringing, and I think I am glad that I had those experiences because I think they made me a really solid whole person. Right? So I do have a political agenda. I do take political sides. I have a political angle, if you will, and it's called the Constitution of the United States. Okay? And so that is the great document that I hold allegiance to, more so than any party or any people or persons. Right? So that great document, and that great document is also flawed. And why is it flawed? Because it was created by human beings. And so I am working with folks to continually look at that great document and iron out its flaws. And we'll talk more about that too in our session. All right? Cool. So so here are some of the core things that we'll kind of talk about. We'll talk about this idea of the relationship between context and culture, because words come out of context and they come out of culture. Right? Paradigms and blind spots, this idea of private logic. So private logic is the concept that it makes sense to me, even if it doesn't make sense to anybody else. And so I operate as if what I think, So people who steal, what do they think about all other people? They steal too, right? If I'm a liar, I assume that everybody else is a liar too. Right. So that's part of that private logic. And then lastly, we'll talk about this idea of cognitive control. Folks heard of implicit bias, right? What is that? Or how is that talked about in popular culture and even in our field? What is implicit bias? How's it used? How's it talked about? They didn't mean to, it just happened, right? What else is implicit bias?
Unconscious?
It's unconscious, right? So people say, I grew up with this, I can't help it, it's part of my stuff. And so what I like to suggest to you is that implicit bias is hooey. Not that it doesn't happen, it does happen, right? But using that as an excuse for something is not going to work, right? So there was a TV show, Flip Wilson, and there was a character, and anytime that she got into trouble, she would say, the devil made me do it. Right? So she'd get in these zany adventures and all sorts of stuff. And they'd say, well, Geraldine, why'd you do it? And she would say, the devil made me do it. How would that work if your clients came to you and said, the devil made me do this? What would you? Right? It wouldn't fly at all, right? But if we say implicit bias made me do it, then all of a sudden it's okay. Right? And so what I'm suggesting is not so much that implicit bias is hooey, but what we need is cognitive control. So those things, even those things that are subconscious, things that you're not aware of, you will be held accountable for those, right? And should be. And so we need to have cognitive control to overcome those things. So this is the first thing I'd like for you to do. And you know what? I'll just pass handouts out now. No, you can do this in your head. So I walk into this room with a certain amount of privilege that can turn into power. So my privilege can turn into power. So I'm a cisgendered male. I'm 6'2". I am a conservative Christian. I speak English. I don't have a felony. I am married. I have a 4-year-old daughter. I am either I am low middle class or higher lower class. I'm not sure where I fit in that, right? I am African American or black.
You have citizenship?
I have citizenship. I think I said I speak English as my primary or dominant language. I am mildly attractive and extremely humble. Right? So just ask me how humble I am and I'll tell you. Right? So all of those things give me privilege. And they give me privilege in context. But that privilege is contextual. Right? So what I'd like for you to think about is where, and you can write this down if you have something to write on, and if not, I'll pass out the handout. So you can write this on the front. But I want you to think about your power and privilege. So What power or privilege do you currently have?
So I don't use.
Yeah, right, yes. What power or privilege do you currently have? Many of you are brilliant, so you already see the scheme of folding hamburger, hot dog. But what you think about the power and privilege that you have? The second question being, where can your privilege turn into power? So in what context does your, does your privilege turn into power? What privileges do you have? And then the last question is, when can that privilege be a liability? Liability meaning something that can hold you or prevent you from doing something, right? To get the payout. Not helpful. So give about another minute or so. I know these are deep questions and you're driving by some of that stuff, but most importantly, I want you to think. All right, stop. What I'd like you to do is get in groups of 3 and kind of talk about 3 or 4. Math is not exact, but a group of 3 or 4, and talk about these things. All right. So talk about your privilege. Talk about how that can turn into power, and then when is that a liability? When can that be a liability? All right.
Then she left, so I told her one of the outpatient therapists.
That's the regional, so the other people can see it as. Yeah.
I'm married kind of typical right.
I had to power the way I thought about it was I mean, at least
Absolutely.
You know your fears about that. I think they're smarter than me. Really like, you know, with clients. And my last night, I mean, you guys are my relating more to me. They have
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, and all right. You can, but I just wanted to. Yep, you can. So I'll give you 2 more minutes.
And the one that discounts.
That's like you can talk about that words matter.
My name is,
Four, three, two, one, and so I do want you to know this will not be the last opportunity you have to talk about these things. All right. So you will have other opportunities. All right. I do want to say I appreciate people being brave and jumping into, or as they say, leaning into these questions. So as you were either writing your thoughts down or you were sharing or listening, what came up for you about you during this process of talking about power and privilege? What came up for you about you during power and privilege? Yes.
Could it be someone else's life?
That
came up for me?
Yeah, well, I was going to get there, but you go right ahead.
Someone in my group said, I think some of my power is invisible to me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, that's my experience. In so many occasions, like it's hard to imagine that you have privilege. Like such a context, it's only like that's one point where you're like, in this context, that is true. Oh my goodness, what do you?
Yeah.
So just like a lot of times your power is invisible.
Is invisible, right? So I've traveled. I haven't been. I wouldn't call myself a world traveler, but I have been outside of the United States and I've been in other places. And I have to check my own power and privilege, right? When I'm overseas, because in the United States, there's something that I expect when I get to a restaurant. I expect to be a part of the service, which is when I get a beverage, right? They bring me my beverage, and they also bring me what? Water. And what's in the water? Ice, right? I had to check myself, like, wait a minute, they didn't bring me any ice. What's going on? Context, right? Context. In some cases, I didn't want the ice in my water, right? Given from where I come from, that would make me sick, right? Simultaneously, there are other parts of the world where refrigeration is at a premium and they don't waste time or money on ice, right? So that was one of those things I need to check myself, right? It's invisible, right? Yeah. Other things that people notice about themselves. Yes.
One thing I thought of, and I don't know, I've never thought about this before, is I'm a white woman and my husband is a Mexican immigrant, and just how my power plays out in our relationship. Like if we go to the bank, they look at me and they talk to me, and I'm always the primary signer of loans or whatever it may be, or you know, just enrolling the kids in school or all those things. They're always looking at me first, and they're not really considering or making sure he's understanding. And think that probably is different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in a different context, right? Yeah. Other things. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. What else? Other things you notice about yourself?
I guess like just growing up through this kind of education and speaking around it, learning how the systems work. It just gives me power like every day and privilege, and sometimes I don't think about it until like I'm sitting down here or I'm, you know, talking with kids. I work with a lot of, you know, with parents and families, and that's when I realize it. And so sometimes I feel like put myself on track and just say, okay, wait, like, you know, you need to make sure that like they are understanding what's going on because maybe they didn't get.
Yeah. Yeah. Like who taught you about what you know? Like how have you come to actually know some of the stuff that you know about how to operate in the world, right? In most cases, either you learned from hard knocks or somebody actually told you, right? And so growing up in my family, you know, kind of lower income, lots of lower income folks, you got a car that you could, you bought a car that you could afford, right? So if the payments were $99 a month, that's a good, that was a good deal. You got a good deal. No one ever talked about interest rates. So if you get a 99, you know, monthly payment on a car, but you have a 25% interest rate, that's not a good deal, right? So how have we learned how to operate in these systems? And oftentimes, particularly with young people, we bring a lot of assumptions to the table of things that they're supposed to know already, but who would have taught them that, right? I was working with a university system and was bumping into some stuff, and they said, well, you know, that's what we always do. And I was like, well, how are we supposed to know? How am I supposed to know that? I'm not a part of us always, right? And stuff like that. So no, we do have to be mindful and check our own power and privilege and think about where did we learn those things? How do we learn those things? And why might other people not know those things? And then how do we teach them the things that are necessary for them to know about systems and places and all sorts of stuff? Other things people learned about themselves or through conversation with someone else. Yes.
I realized that if you would have asked me this probably a year ago, my answer would have been really different.
Okay.
And from the year with training that I've gone through, experiences, and some of the stuff that I've been working with teenagers that I work with, it really opened my eyes to some of the things that I was doing, and it made me adjust and reevaluate. And then having a kid who is motivated now to try to do more into things that I want for him, so it's also made me more of an advocate of helping my in-laws
Yeah.
and educating them to make sure that he does that.
Yeah, yeah, no, I appreciate that. My daughter's also multiracial, right? So she's American Indian and I'm Black, so we call her a Glendian, right? That's our joke. You cannot use our joke. Right? But yeah, so how do we navigate those things, right? And again, a lot of conversations that I have been a part of, both sitting in chairs like yours with a presenter like myself, particularly in the 90s, really leaned towards some people having privilege and other people not having privilege at all. And I hope that you recognize that we all have privileges, but they can be useful, but they can also be liabilities for us, right? Depending on the context of it, right? And so So it's not, the issue isn't do you have privilege or do you not have privilege, it's what do you do with the privilege you do have, right? So that's the most important part that I want you to think about. What do you do with that privilege that you have? So, I'm trying to think if I should do this or not. Yes, we'll do this. So if you go to your handout, you'll see that they're numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4. I want to pay attention to number 3. And at number 3, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gray circles at number 3. And if you haven't picked it up yet, I think it's a technical term for folding called hamburger hot dog. Okay? I learned that from preschool. My daughter's preschool. Hamburger hot dog. All right. So in those gray circles, what I want you to write down is one thing that you value or that is important to you in each one of those things. So it could be a person, it could be a place, it could be a person like a significant other, a grandchild, a nephew, a cousin. It could be a place like Bemidji or Belize, right? It could be a concept like freedom or justice. One thing that you value in each one of those circles. In each circle. So you'll have 5 values. 1 in each of those circles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 values. You don't have to be ultra deep. Just the first 5 things that pop off come to your head, right? Like, oh, I'm going to be tested on this. It's going to determine the rest of my life, you know? All right. So it looks like most people have 4, if not all 5. What I like to do now is I'd like to play a game. And the game is very simple. What I want you to do is to find 2 people for each one of the things that you wrote down. So that means you'll find a minimum of 10 people. Right? So 2 people for each one. And I want you to find people who either have something similar to what you have or people who like what you have on your paper. Right? And once you found those individuals, I want them to put their initials next to the circle that they either like or have similar to what you have. Right? So if I have a father and you have uncle, that's family, close enough. Right? So 2 people for a minimum of 2 people for each one. If you get more than that, great. But a minimum of 2 people for each one. They'll put their signature next to the thing that they either like or share with you, and you have 90 seconds to do that, starting now.
Can I ask you guys to come around me?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, yes.
I did one.
Oh, I see.
How
60 seconds.
You have a line in front of you.
Yay! Tell my people I need to know.
I didn't check with that.
Good. How are you?
You're not
We should have Bernie.
45 seconds. 10 seconds. Four, three, two, one, and game over. Get over here. Anybody play Mortal Kombat? Get over here. Now I guess the new thing is what, Fortnite? Is what all the kids are playing now. I spent. No, this is an interesting story. So my nephew my wife and her sisters all married people who are not native, right? Not Native American. So I'm black. My wife's oldest sister married a white gentleman, and her middle sister married a Haitian man. Right? So we look like the world, right? Yeah, you look like the UN, right? And so it was interesting. So they moved. So her sister moved to New Hampshire. So they live in New Hampshire. So here, this brownish, blackish family, like living in New Hampshire. Do you know anything about New Hampshire? Right? So they stick out like kind of sore thumbs kind of thing. But people are cool. Where they're living is all cool, all things considered. And so we're on the res, right? We're on the res, doing some vacationing on the res, which is an interesting thing. So we're on the res, doing some vacation stuff, and the kids get hungry for some snacks. And so we go to the store, and I'm like, this is the res, right? This is the middle of Montana, like Montana nowhere, like the only thing are cows and silos, and there are more silos than there are cows, right? Missile. But anyway. So at any rate, so I'm like, this is like, the middle of nowhere. So we get to the convenience store, and the kids are happy as clams. Like they hadn't smiled all vacation. They're miserable. And guess why? Guess what they found? Hot Cheetos and Takis. So they were like, oh, Takis, hot Cheetos. And Arizona iced tea. I was like, no, you guys are such stereotypes. Don't do this. Right? But I thought it was interesting. These kids from New Hampshire, found with their stuff, and it's just youth culture is just very interesting. Very interesting. And guess how much on the reservation? Guess how much the Arizona iced tea was?
Was it $5? Less dollars?
It was 99 cents. It's everywhere. That was the. I was like, how do they do that? How do they make it 99 cents even on the reservation, right? I mean, convenience stores even sell. They must be making lots of money, Arizona. Anyway, so that was a stall tactic to get people back in their seats. So I appreciate that. Thank you. So when you walked around the room, and and you looked at other people's stuff, was there anything you saw in other people's papers and you were like, oh, why didn't I think about that? I should have wrote that down on my paper. Was there any, what was one of those?
I saw equity. And
Equity.
I was
Like, why didn't I write that down, right? What else did you see of someone else's? Humor, right? That's a good one. One more. Travel, right? Cool. As you were also going around the room, were there things that were more difficult to find people to sign on, or you actually didn't find anybody to sign on it? Like it's blank. One of your circles is blank, or you didn't find anybody to sign on it. Yes. Success. That could be. Okay. Please raise your hand if you value success, even if it wasn't written on your paper. The success is important to you. All right. Cool. One more. What was another one that was kind of different? Yes.
Money was important.
Money, right? Please raise your hand if money is of importance to you, even if you don't have a lot of. No, I mean, right? So money is important. It's how you get goods and services, right? I mean, you exchange those things. All right. One more. Yes. Passion. If you have passion for things, for your work, for lifestyle, for people around you, raise your hand if you value passion, having passion. All right, sweet. So what do you think actually was the goal of this activity? What was I going after with this activity? That we have similar things in common, right? We have similar things in common. And we have differences, right? So in a lot of trainings that I've been in, the trainer either wanted us to focus on our differences or our commonalities. What I would like for you to do is to think about both. We share commonalities and differences. Yes?
Well, also something we pointed out is that somebody would say passion, but they really meant the same thing. So sometimes it's about taking a moment to say, we're both saying the same thing, we're just using different words to describe it.
Yeah, taking that time to do that, right? And particularly with our young people, we have to do that a lot, right? So I told you the makeup of my daughter, right? So she comes to me and she says, Dad, you're black. And I'm like, yes, got it right? So I look at her and I said, well, what are you? Right? And she says, I'm skinny. So now I'm feeling bad about this black thing. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean I was black, right? So she says, I'm skinny. I said, well, what does that mean for you? She says, I have skin. She's 4, right? So she's skinny. And I was like, yeah, you're skinny. We'll come back to that other stuff later, right? So no, really looking at those words. How do we use those words? Taking that time to do that, right? So my point really is to have us look at our differences and commonalities. Color blindness is not helpful, right? Because you miss something that is a filter for the person who holds the so-called color, right? And truth be told, don't we all have color in respect to that, right? So, when people get sick, they turn green, and some people turn red with embarrassment. It's happening right now, but it's okay, right? So in that kind of esoteric sense, we all have so-called whatever color. But I also know what is meant to do that, to segregate people and that kind of stuff. So I'm not naive to that. But I would like for you to write down this as a new kind of definition of diversity, or one that can be added to a definition that you might use. That it is the recognition and honoring of our commonalities and our differences. That diversity is that honoring and recognition of our commonalities and our differences. And there's a graph that I'll show more about in your handout as we move forward. But it's important for us to recognize our commonalities and our differences. If you don't recognize that I am a black African American born in the United States, if you don't recognize that, then you miss opportunities to get to know me. It was funny. I was working with a school district, and they were like, "We're having problems with all these black kids." They didn't say it like that, but I'm saying it that because it's comical, right? But they were like, "We're having problems with all these black kids," and I said, "Whoa, let's pause for just a second." So when you say black kids, who are you talking about, right? And they said the black kids. I said, "Well, I need more information to be able to help you." Well, the Somali kids. Okay, now I have some information. The Somali young men. I have some information that can actually be helpful. When you just say black kids, it could be all sorts of stuff. The Liberian students are having. Okay, cool. Now I have enough information to be able to create some strategies to help. Right. So we have to recognize that we need to understand commonalities and differences, right? So how many of us have been hungry, right? Been hungry, whatever that looks like. You know, some of you look hangry right now, right? How many of us have had our heart broken, right? Yeah. How many of us have been the heartbreaker? Right? So we understand what it means to be human. So I can approach most folks with that acknowledgement of what humanity looks like. But how they want to be honored in their humanity, or how that humanity is defined oftentimes, is contextual. And so that requires a bit more work on my part. That's where our differences kind of come in. So what are all human beings after? They're after three things. They're after significance, belonging, and safety. Significance says that I am a person of purpose and power. I can do something. Whether God tells me what that purpose is, or whether I decide what that purpose is, I have a purpose. Right? And so one of the most important things to recognize with our young people is that they're either searching for purpose or trying to demonstrate their purpose in the face of either adversity or other challenges. So significance. Then we're also looking for belonging. We want to be connected with people who understand our purpose. We want to be connected with people who understand our purpose. I would venture to say that the people you call friends might understand your purpose and your power, what you have to offer the world, better oftentimes than family members do. Right? So we want to connect with people who understand our significance. And then lastly, we want to be physically, mentally, emotionally, economically, spiritually safe to be in relationships with people who understand our significance. Right? So why do kids join gangs? All those things, right? Why are they promiscuous oftentimes? One of those three things, or all of those three things, right? So what I would like to suggest to you is that when dealing with a young person, and this goes for any people, right? Any person. If you're trying to help them or figure out what's going on with them, ask yourself, what is the situation that I'm engaging them really about? Is it about significance? Is it about belonging? Or is it about safety? Is it a combination of those things? Because if I'm trying to be helpful and I can recognize the root of the kind of help that I'm trying to give, then I can actually be impactful in helping them, right? So human beings are looking for significance, belonging, and safety. Abraham Maslow built his, this is from Adlerian psychology. Abraham Maslow built the pyramid, the hierarchy, off of these three principles, right? So very much in line with what we deal with on a regular basis. So what is the function of words? So if all human behavior is goal-directed, and it's directed towards these things, right? These three things. All human behavior is goal-directed, and it's directed towards getting safety, significance, and belonging. What are the functions of words? What functions do words serve?
Hopefully help with understanding.
Understanding of what? Of significance?
Words not to use to establish power.
To establish power, okay.
Label.
To label. To help or hurt. All right, so I like the X-Men. So growing up, so I have a huge X-Men collection from 1964. I don't have number 1, but I do have number 3. The number 3 X-Men. Number 1 is like $6,000 or something. I got to do a few more workshops to get. So, but I like the X-Men because they have these superpowers, these ultra-human powers, or whatever. And the one guy that I thought was the most fascinating was the guy in the wheelchair. I don't know if you've ever seen those movies or seen the comic books, but they have a guy who's in a wheelchair, which for the 60s, having people with disabilities in any kind of mainstream media was cutting edge, right? But I thought it was interesting because he was in a wheelchair, but he was the most powerful of the group because he could move stuff with his mind, right? And so I always wanted that mind power. I thought that would be great until I realized I have it. And so do you. So what is the function of words? So I want you to close your eyes just for a second. Don't fall asleep. I know some of you are very close, and I appreciate that, so we're going to keep this moving. So just close your eyes just for a second. I'm going to say a word. The word is apple. Open your eyes. What came up for you when I said the word apple? Honeycrisp. What's that? A pie. A red apple. A green apple. An orchard. Apple products, right? A phone. A touch, right? Did I say anything about any of those other things? Okay, so anybody who saw, so we said red apples, green apples, white apple, right? White apples or whatever. Anybody's apple have a shiny spot on it? Yeah. Okay. Yours had. Anyone have a leaf on your apple? A stem. A stem. Okay. A stem on your apple. Anybody have a bite out of your apple? Yours was cut. You had a cut apple. And in caramel. Oh, I'm coming to your house for the holidays, right? Yeah. Did I say anything about leaves or caramels or colors or whatever? No. I said the word apple, and what? People had a picture of an apple, right? Now, I'm going to say another word. Do you have a picture for that? And if it's stereotypical or racist, keep it to yourself, right? No, the idea, the concept was that if you don't have a specific picture for something, you'll make up a picture for it, right? So words, they function to transmit one idea to another person, right? And the more specific the words, the better the better the transfer goes, right? So if I said rotten apple, would you get the same picture as when I just said apple? No, you get a totally different picture, right? So words function as a way to transfer ideas. So words are extremely important. So when we say things, we have to recognize that this is a transfer of ideas. And if we're not clear in the language that we use, they will end up with what kind of idea? If we're not clear, the idea will be what? Unclear as well, right? It'll be unclear as well. So how do words actually draw people? Okay, so what is the purpose of a gift? What is the purpose? Anybody ever received a gift? Anybody ever given a gift? All right. What's the purpose of a gift? To express love, gratitude, appreciation, to make someone feel good. In order to do what with that person? To be kind, to give, to connect, to encourage, to draw them, right? So I give a gift because I want to, ultimately, one of my hopes is that this will draw our relationship closer, or we'll have a closer idea of who we are, but to draw them closer, right? So I give that gift. Words are gifts that can be used to draw people, right? So what do I call it? A trans kid, right? Someone who's in transition or who is non-binary, right? What do I call them? Guess what I call them? What they want to be called. Whether I agree with it, like it, or not, it doesn't have anything to do with me. I call them what they want to be called. Right? So how do words draw? When we give that gift of giving people what they want, which is what? Significant safety, significance, and belonging. That's the gift. So words are to draw people back to safety, significance, and belonging. And what can repel them? The opposite of that, right? Not asking them, has anyone ever gotten a gift that you either didn't ask for or wasn't useful to you in any way? Right? Yeah. What was that? Yeah, you re-gifted, right? It's like, oh yeah, this fruitcake is going to somebody else, right? Oh yeah, but that's the hard part about regifting. You got to remember who you got it from and who you gave it to, right? We're like, we had in our office we had they did this kind of gift exchange thing, and it was more of kind of a joke. So there was this plate that just kept getting passed to different people, right? Every so often. Anyway, so I won't spend too much time on this because I think you get the concept of this. But words can have impact, right? Obviously. How does one manage the impact of words? So how do we help our young people impact or manage the impact of words that aren't giving them safety, significance, and belonging? How do we help them manage that?
Give them knowledge of the words.
Okay, so we give them knowledge of the words. We give them what? Resiliency skills. So give me an example of a resiliency skill.
Understanding that not all, even if someone's intention is to hurt your feelings with words, to not necessarily make it personal. From words that you would know. Doesn't say as much about you as it says about them.
Okay, so really having people, young people in particular, kind of refocus the focus of those words, right? And recognize where their power is. Validating their feelings around those words, right? Stuff that's really tough. That's hurtful. One thing that I have found to be useful, particularly in working with young people, is using yes and. Right? No, yes, that happened to you. That sucked. Oh my, whatever feelings that they say about that. And what are we going to do about that? And how do we move on from that? Right? So there's that. And then, what function does self-talk serve? Right? What function does self-talk serve? Self-talk is what? It's that internal dialogue, right? And what do we want with that positive self-talk, right? We get negative self-talk all the time, right? All the time. What do we want with that positive self-talk?
Validation.
We want validation, right? And we want to increase the size of that voice. We want to increase the size of that voice because the negative is very loud and it gets stimulated by other people and it gets oftentimes magnified. But we want to help the young person or any person really be able to declare their self-talk, right? So we want that to be a loud voice. Yes.
I just did a little exercise of self-talk with myself. My daughter is expecting any day now, and I took her down to the hospital. At this time, I was over like going down to the emergency room. I'm okay, take me to the hospital. And so we got there, and the nurse said to her, you want your things to drink? So I'd like some ice chips. And the nurse said, oh, you girls like your ice chips. And I immediately, my brain went, you girl.
Yeah.
And then I said, take care, have a place, I get my daughter. But then that word, you girls, pregnant girls, young girls of color, what was the reference, what was I didn't like it, but I had to remember that the purpose was her, not for me to, but I had to do a lot of self-talk.
And like it or not, particularly for our young people, that is a skill that has been way underdeveloped, right? Talk yourself through stuff before you react or respond. And part of it has to do with brain development and all this other stuff. But I would also say that we are in such an instantaneous, I'm working with my nephew, right? So I didn't want this for him. He's now a baby's daddy, right? And that's not something I wanted for him. I wanted, I coached him. I talked him through all this stuff. But he's acting. He's now 21, but he's acting like he's 15, and how he's interacting with this with his child's mother or whatever. And I'm like, dude. First of all, social media is not a place you want to have these kind of conversations, because do you want your employer to know that you're a deadbeat dad? Or imply that you're a deadbeat dad? He was like, what do you mean? I was like, when she puts that thing and you respond to that thing, all that is out in social media, and employers are looking through your feeds and all sorts of stuff. I'm not hiring somebody who is going to be a legal problem for me, right? He was like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. I'm like, that's why I'm your uncle, right? So yeah, no, helping young people part, because social media, something hits you, bam, you can instantly respond with no consequences. You can even call 911 on people for no apparent reason, and they get the consequences and you don't, right? I mean, so this is the kind of society that we're in. Yes.
Yeah, we talk a little more about our kids who use social media to, I don't want to use their anymore. They make these statements, and their friends get really concerned, and so then they're calling 911 to these people, and they're not understanding, like, these little words that you're posting, your friends care. They care enough, so then at one of our times, that just 10 people call about this post that they made, and send it to the over because they were concerned when their parents got upset, and it's
Yeah.
You don't realize that instantaneous, even if you felt that way for 5 minutes, 10 minutes later, you might not feel that way.
So I was in the western suburbs. There's a school that has, and many of you may know the system that they use for guidance counselors to engage with kids electronically or whatnot. Just want to make sure. Okay, cool. Electronically and whatnot. And they have a logarithm that if kids say certain words in their social media posts, that they automatically, the social worker or the school counselor gets alerted, and then the police watch or track these students in the post. Anybody familiar with that?
Oh my God.
No, it's crazy. And when I heard it, I was like, so students need to be aware of that, right? So important. So let's go over this concept right here, and then we'll take a short break. We'll take just a biology break in just a second, and then we'll come back and close this out. But so a couple of things that I want us to think about in terms of the words that we use, the places that we're in, and how are we repelling or drawing people to us given how we speak. What I haven't told you yet is what to call people. I hope you've noticed that, right? I haven't told you what to call people, because I'm hoping that you get the principle, so then you'll know what to call people, right? So what repels people? So this idea of cultural competence, and I believe that people say it's not a journey, it's not a da-da-da, but I do believe that there are core concepts that if we grab a hold of these, we can actually be helpful. And so the three overarching pieces are people, process, and power. And so when we think about the words that we use or how we're trying to draw people or what repels people, are we, in terms of the people around us, is our organization or our staffing, is it homogeneous or heterogeneous, right? Homogeneous meaning, are we all alike? Are we all the same? Or are there ways in which we capitalize on our differences, being a heterogeneous group? Are we monoculture? Is there one way of doing things in our organization? Or are we intercultural? Are there many ways to kind of do these approaches to ultimately getting outcome? As it relates to our clients and our students, are we being proactive or reactive? Are we building programs and relationships before problems happen, or are we always responding to problems? Are we researching what new terms are, in terms of the best, so immigrant populations, gender identities, are we researching those things, or are we just responding to what is happening in the world. And are we divesting or are we investing? So divesting means, are we taking stuff away from folks? Investing means, are we pouring into folks? And I would suggest that if we look at people, processes, and power, and we apply each of these four, that will give us a sense of kind of how we're engaging young people in the world. All right. So let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come right back and we'll bring it home.
And I think it's hard coming from women.
Right.
And so I'm always looking for, men that would come in but they don't fit.
Yes, no, just contact
No, that's
So far, so good. All right. All right. So, you can hear my voice, clap once. If you can hear my voice, clap twice. If you can hear my voice, clap 3 times. If you can hear my voice, clap 4 times. Thank you very much. So when we talk about this idea of, the use or choice of words, I think it's important to recognize these 2 important concepts, right? So impact versus intent. So I've been working with my 3-year-old and about sharing, and so I've used. So I say when we have toys with our friends, what do? And she says, quid pro quo. I'm so proud too. People are like, was that Latin? I was like, yes, it was. Yes, it was. Right? So this for that, right? So this for that. This idea of impact versus intent is important to recognize, right? So in the choice of words, how we act, how we respond in certain situations, oftentimes the impact is more important than the intent. And so I'm walking down the hallway at work, and someone swats me on the behind and grabs, and we're not on the softball team together. Do we have a problem? Yes, we have a problem. What is it called? Sexual harassment, sexual assault, however people want to deem that, right? And then what happens next? Maybe some street justice, right, or vigilante justice on the right. But in terms of the organization, what happens in the organization? So you go to HR, right? Human resources, and what happens at human resources? They do an investigation, right? She said they fire you, right? Somebody gets fired, right? But what if HR isn't moving as fast as I like? What can I do? I can have a conversation. What else could I do? I go above HR. I lawyer up. I get my lawyers, my attorneys, and we're gonna make this. We're gonna rock this, right? So what if the person who did the thing, right, says during that process, I'm sorry, you just can't take a joke. I was just kidding. I was kidding. Does that change anything about the process? Why? What's being measured? The impact. The impact is being measured, right? So the impact is being measured. So if someone accidentally says, going back to gender pronouns, right? So someone says, well, I keep accidentally calling them the wrong pronoun, right? What's going to be measured? The impact, not their intention. I didn't mean to not call them what they want to be called, right? Or I didn't know that you don't call that group of people that, or that it's not okay to say you people when, right? The intent gets lost because we're measuring the impact, right? However, what I will say is that intent is still very important, but there's a caveat to that intent. How many of you have either given or received a finger painting? Well, you take the paint, right? Or a macaroni sculpture, right? Where kids glue the macaroni on the thing. When that is received by someone, what place of honor does that get mounted? On the refrigerator. So that piece of art, that fine piece of art goes on the refrigerator, right? Does it get put on Etsy? Oftentimes not, right? Can you find it on eBay? Are people trying to put it on eBay, right? You might not even get a Pinterest off the thing. But it is important to the people who put it on the refrigerator. Why? Because what? Because our kids are the ones that do that, right? They did it out of caring or pride or skill development. And so intention is very important because it's not very impactful what they did, right? But the intention outweighs the impact. And when does intention outweigh impact? When there is what? Relationship. Relationship. You know, I can say the same things in these two situations, but if I have a relationship, the person can talk to me about it. So, you know, call me out of my name. We got a problem. Call me out of my name and we have a relationship. We're cool. So and that's why I kind of jumped on that N-word thing, right? So people, there's this whole big hullabaloo about, why can't white people say the N-word? And I would submit that I don't think black people should say the N-word either, but that's a whole different thing, right? But it goes back to this, right? So having a relationship with folks gives you a whole lot more grace than it does if you don't have a relationship with them. So I think Kendrick Lamar stopped his concert because people were saying, because he didn't have a relationship with those folks, right? So I want you to think about that. That relationship really drives the difference between intent and impact. And so when you go to name someone, or you don't know what to call someone, let's start first with building a relationship with them, and then they'll tell you what to call them, right? So cognitive behavior therapy, I said before, I'm really into cognitive control, and I get that out of cognitive behavior therapy, right? Which is emotions plus thought dictate behaviors. And so we can control our emotions, right? We can help people with their emotions. Anyone ever had a sad friend? Not necessarily clinically depressed, but just sad. What did you do for that sad friend? You listened to them. What else did you do? You tell them jokes. What's that? You send them a picture of your baby, right? Puppies, cats. In Atlanta psychology, they talk about this idea of making tea, right? Encourage people who have the blues to make tea. And why is that? Why do you think they suggest making tea? And it's a contextual thing too, but it could be anything that they're making. Takes their mind off of it. What else? Makes them get up and do something, right? So if you're going to bring somebody over for tea or for pizza or whatever it is, what do you have to do to receive them? You got to take a shower, right? You got to put on some clean clothes. You got to vacuum the floor. I mean, so you start taking yourself out of your situation to engage someone else, right? So thoughts plus behavior, emotions plus thoughts dictate behaviors. And one thing, some clues to how this also works is you'll hear young people say, I didn't feel like doing it, right? So their emotions, they didn't see an emotional benefit of doing it. They didn't see in their mind's eye any value to doing that. So then they have those kinds of behaviors. I like this model because those are all things that we can change and we can manage, right? So I can help someone change their emotional state. So cognitive behavior therapy. So 4 truths about human beings. This is also in your handout right at number 1. Human beings can learn, change, and grow. People do what they think works. Why? Even when it's not effective, they keep doing things, even if it's not effective. Why? Because it's worked before, right? It's worked before, either for them or somebody else told them that this works. Next is all human behavior is goal-directed. So everybody, anytime you interact with someone, they're after something. They're trying to achieve something. And what do we say that those 3 goals were of human behavior? Significance, belonging, and safety. Or safety, significance, and belonging, right? So I would suggest that even when particularly young people say this, why did you do that? I don't know. But I want you to know, right? And they know why they did it. They just don't know why you're asking them why are you asking me why I did it, right? So all human behavior is goal directed, and then attitude is a reaction to goals. Oftentimes we get caught up in the theatrics of attitude, right? You better not. Ooh, I wish you would. Right? We get caught up in that, and we don't realize that attitude is a response to goal achievement. Example: Friday night. Oh, let's do Saturday. So Saturday, doing stuff around the house, chores getting done, all that kind of stuff. Kid gets a text: Mom, Marsha's having a party, and it starts in 5 minutes. Can I go? What does the parent say? Right, the parent are like, what are you talking about? Who schedules a party at this time of the day at some random time, and you tell them, oh, you knew about this party, didn't you? And you didn't clean your room, and you got a C in your class, 2 years ago. All this stuff is unleashed on the kid, and what happens to the kid's attitude? Ooh, right? So they go to the room, they slam the door like they own the joint, right? So then the parent is like, oh, you know what? Marsha's going through this acne thing. She really does need some support. Let me send the kid over, and the family's good. So the parent gets it clear in their head. They go knock on the door. Doom, 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 doom. What? Parent was like, I don't want to get triggered. I'm about to get triggered. I said, you know what? You can go to Marsha's, and I'll drop you off at this time, and then I'll pick you up at this time. We got some other stuff to do, so you can't stay the whole time. But get your stuff, let's go. What happens to the kid's attitude? It's better, right? It may not be as pristine as you want it to be, but it's certainly better, right? Why? What was a determining factor of the shift in attitude? You got what you wanted, right? So when we talk about this idea of attitudes, I don't want us to get caught up in all the theatrics of the stuff. I want us to be goal-focused. And what are they after? Significance, belonging, and safety, right? So when we see this stuff, okay, so how do we work through the situation? You're after safety, what are you after? I'm trying to figure out what they're after, right? Because then I can help them have a good attitude. But what if they're after something, or the way that they want to get safety, significance, and belonging isn't something I can do, it's illegal, it's not something they could even handle if I could give it to them, right? Then what is my job as a helper? To educate them. So does education change your disposition? At this level, we could say that.
Well, I think it's once they're in a place, and if they get there, is to find a way to validate, to be able to recognize that, it looks, what I'm seeing is that you're really upset right now.
Yeah.
And when you feel like you're in a place to have a conversation, let me know. And then I have somebody who said, I'm about to approach your office. And I simply just sat there and said, I really hope that you don't. And then ready to talk on here.
Yep.
And then they could, continued on with the meltdown, and I did not move any muscle.
So part of it is validating them and then finding out what they want and helping them get a new goal, right? Helping them set a new goal. So I do a lot of community mediations for diversion from, anybody know Willie Bridges? Mr. Willie Bridges, right? So he sends a lot of folks my way who could be in the system, and he's like, no, we need to get this out of it. And one of the things I asked the students who are in front of me is, how did that plan work for you? Right? Did you get what you wanted? And the first response is what? Yeah, right? And so then I start talking about all the consequences of the things that they did. And I said, so you planned on your mom having to take off from work, losing pay this week to come deal with you. That was part of your plan. Your plan was to spend 3 days in suspension, missing important tests and blah, 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 blah. So you intended all of that. So you're a mastermind. You can think of all of that stuff. No, but you know, it just, ooh. Right? I love that comment, right? Because there's so much there you can work with ooh. But yeah, so not getting caught up in attitude, really knowing that it's around goal accomplishment. And bad attitudes indicate that they're not getting what they want. Good attitudes indicate that they are. So I was going to talk about Trump, but I'm going to skip that. No, I'm not going to skip it. I'm going to engage it because it's important that we know where we are, right? So this was the county by county. So, let me go back to this picture. So Minnesota shows up as blue. There's a blue state in that election. And this is Minnesota county by county, same election. What do you recognize? It's not all blue.
A lot of the blue is in the Twin Cities.
A lot of the blue is in the Twin Cities. And where else? Up north and? Yeah, it's metropolitan areas with universities, right? So the way so words are important, right? Words are important. So when I was growing up, being red or being blue, being either was a bad thing because that meant you were in a gang. But I find it interesting that they use that same negative gang affiliation to talk about political parties, right? Words are important. Words are important, right? So I only bring this up because I don't want us to be tricked because there's a trick here. There's a trick here. There's a setup. And the setup simply is metropolitan areas, universities, lots of students, and opportunities to practice diversity. Opportunities to practice diversity? Not so much as in these places, right? So it's not really about being Democratic or Republican. It's not about being conservative or liberal, but it is about opportunities to practice, the necessity to practice diversity. Right? And I would also have you look at these ideas of conservative and liberal with small c's and small l's, right? How many of you would like to save what you have? Either your lifestyle, your money, your job. You raise your hand if you want to conserve what you have. You are conservative, right? You want to conserve that. How many people don't want other people taking control of your life and telling you what to do? Raise your hand. If you don't, right, then you are liberal, right? You want liberty. So we're more alike than we're different. There's these false dichotomies that get presented to us. And if we don't recognize that this is really about relationships and not about these political affiliations that they try to do, we'll get all messed up. Let's talk about a little bit of diversity, equity, inclusion. One thing, you've seen this picture a bazillion times. What has always been the problem in this picture? The fence, right? The fence. True inclusion means lowering barriers. So do I have to worry about equality or this idea of equity if I don't have those barriers up in the first place, right? And so I want you to think about where and how do we get rid of, limit, remove barriers to participation. And one of the things I didn't say when we talked about this idea of power and privilege, what is power? And what I would suggest is that power has two components. One is the authority to enact something, the authority to get things done. But then it's also the access to participate in getting things done, right? So it's the authority to get things done as well as the access to participate to get things done. So there's that. We're gonna do this other thing. That's my daughter, by the way. I just put her. Yeah, I miss her, so I just put her in the freezer. So it had nothing to do with anything else. One thing I will say is another thing is when we talk about social justice, people try to talk about it as if it's some leftist kind of thing or it's a touchy-feely kind of thing. When what I would suggest is very concrete, very concrete. That it is making sure that everyone is in the picture. Can you imagine taking a series of pictures that you knew you were there, but you just didn't show up in the picture, or you were blotted out in the picture? How would that make you feel at first? Angry? Well, yeah, you'd be like, yeah, maybe. If I was cute that day, no, I don't, right? So, but what if that happened year after year after year? You start to develop a complex about yourself. So people try to take a picture of you, and you go, no, don't take pictures. I don't take good pictures, right? All because of all this other stuff. Well, what we also recognize is that in the preamble to the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, there were people that were missing, right? They're missing from that picture. So social justice says, let's bring those people back into the picture. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed with their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So who's missing from this wonderful picture? Anyone who's not a man. What else? Or white. What about white men? Who were they referring to as people who could actually participate in that system? Property owners, right? So rich white property owners. Was that the majority of white people in the United States at that particular time, or was that a minority? It was a great minority, right, of people who own property. So this was not even written for all white people, right? So important to think about social justice in the idea with the idea that it is really bringing people back into what I would call constitutional favor, right? So making sure that they're a part of our American story. The last couple of things I want to touch on, and you can see this in your handout. Let's, just number 2, just really quickly, is this idea that origin of bias and that kind of stuff really starts in our brain, right? So there's our prefrontal cortex, there is kind of the mammalian brain, and then there's the reptilian brain, which is the oldest primary source of our brain, right? And so in that primary brain, it is always looking for danger, and it is looking for is looking to mate, and is looking for danger. And so if it can find a dangerous mate, it's happy. That was a joke, didn't go over very well, but and so that part of the brain is always looking for danger. And the interesting thing is that people can use words to stimulate that part of the brain, and that part of the brain hijacks critical thinking, right? That all the undocumented or illegal immigrants are coming for your stuff. That only assumes that that there's numbers that can prove that, but also that they want your stuff, right? then they want your stuff. And so, you know, people try to play with it. It's also referred to as, I don't know if people heard of dog whistle politics, right? So what dog whistle politics is, instead of saying derogatory terms, they use other words that have now replaced those derogatory terms, right? So an example would be when we think of people on welfare, we typically think of so-called minority groups. We never think about the majority of the people who are on welfare, which is, right? When we say tough on crime, right? War on drugs, these are all, this one of, law and order, right? So these are all things that mean, they're specific words that have usurped some other meanings, right? So, yeah. So, and all of those things come out of a context, right? So, I like that. Anyone seen the iceberg theory of culture? All right, cool. How does that work? How does the iceberg theory of culture work? Yep. So there's, so very much like this, right? So there's part that you can see, and then there's a hidden part. And I think that served its time. I don't think it was as organic as I need for us to think about ourselves. So, so I've developed this carrot of culture. And so there are artifacts and there are values, and they're in symbiotic relationship to one another, right? So what does the top of the carrot do for the bottom of the carrot? It gives it nutrients from where? From the sun, right? So photosynthesis happens, draws it in, and feeds it there. And what does the root do for the top of the carrot? Nutrients from where? From the ground, right? So water or minerals, and it feeds it to the top. So they need each other to survive, right? So artifacts need values. So when I'm in my garden and I can see the top, this green part, what assumption am I making about what's under the ground? That there's a carrot under the ground, right? So when we see artifacts, we have to understand that those are physical manifestations of values, right? Physical manifestation of values. So, I know it's a favorite subject, particularly people who work with young people, sagging pants, right? So people have the pants all the way to the thing, and I'm like, how do you, I don't want to see that, oh my God, wow. And when I taught high school, I was the pull up your pants police. I was writing demerits every chance I got. Pull up your pants, pull up your pants. And it got so bad that the kids would start pulling down their shirt as opposed to pulling up their pants, right? So they pull the shirt down, so they had to pull their pants up. Like that made a whole lot of sense. But whatever, right? And I got so bad, I started doing it out in public. And I would see people, with the pants sagging, and I'd be like, and the interesting thing is, people would pull up the pants. It was the strangest thing. I don't know what it was, right? But I stopped doing that when I understood this principle. Anyone ever seen Stand and Deliver with James Olmos and Blue Diamond Phillips? Check it out. It's bad acting, but good messages in it, right? Bad acting, good messages. So Lou Diamond Phillips came to school. He's playing a Mexican and just bad accents and all this kind of stuff. Right? So he comes up to his teacher and he's like, "Yo, teach, I need some home books." The teacher's like, "Home books? What's a home book?" He's like, "I need some home books." And the teacher's like, "I'm sorry, what are you talking about?" He said, "When I leave school, I can't be seen carrying no books in my neighborhood. So I need a set of books for home, and I need a set of books for school. I need some home books." And the teacher looked at him and he said, "Okay, I'll give you a set of home books." Right? What I realized about my kids who were sagging their pants, that in their context, that's a strategic advantage. What I also knew that they wouldn't always be in their neighborhood. So I told my students, in this space, I'm going to need you to pull up your pants. I do know that when you leave this space, you may need to pull your pants down. I understand that. I respect it. And you know, you do you. But in this space, I want to teach you how to be culturally fluent. And some kids were like, well, you teaching me how to be a sellout. I just want to be me. Okay, you be you all the time and you will be unemployed. Sometimes you got to flow. Yes, ma'am.
I hear what you're saying, but
Yeah.
that can also be very damaging.
Yeah, I got
I'm
it.
gonna say it as a Black woman, as an African woman. What is going on in our society right now, which has happened a lot of times in the past, being attacked for our hair.
Yeah.
Kids are being kicked out of school
Yep.
for wearing their hair
Yep.
the way it's supposed to be.
That's absolutely right.
And for me, it's hurtful hearing that people are constantly telling us you need to change your way to fit into society. Otherwise, you will not have a job. You will not have this. That has nothing to do with what is.
So no, and hold on. I want to address that. No. I want to address that directly. So just so you know, I cut my dreads.
I'm sorry, you had to do that.
No, I didn't have to do. No. I didn't have to do anything. I chose to do that. Right? I had a choice. So my dreads were right about here. I can show pictures or whatever. Love my mane. Love it. It didn't define me. Right? So what I found was that other people were trying to define me by what they thought about me. My dreads had lost their purpose. I grew them so that I could define me. But now other people are trying to define me, and I'm not having it. I have a choice. With that choice, the truth is we're in a cruel and wicked world, right? If I don't tell the truth about that truth and that wickedness, I don't give people tools. I don't tell kids what to do or what not to do. My job is to give them tools and to let you know this is when we do these things. There are results of doing these things, and be prepared for those things, right? So I think it's absolutely outlandish. A young lady just got kicked out of a Catholic school because they said her hair wasn't natural,
yeah.
Right?
So I was going to say, before you go there, I agree with you, giving people the tools to survive in the world that we know. But also, when it's young females, that's how your hair is going to be. We can't just cut our hair off. I'm not going to be.
No.
You look beautiful, by the way, you know. But I don't want to be. I don't want to be bald. If I don't want to be short hair, I'm not going to do it. Wouldn't want my kids to do it.
No.
When I have kids or whatever. But I think too, we have to be part of the solution to presenting new solutions, to changing policies and being like, so what? If these were the rules, we're human beings, as you've been saying, correct?
Yep.
So then create
Let
a
me get you just a
safety.
second.
Create a safety where children and anybody can be accepted for who they are, and they can add, like you said, we have differences and similarities, and their differences can be celebrated as much as other people's differences are celebrated.
So here is what I teach the kids versus what I do, right? So I don't send children to go fight grown folks' battles, right? I do let children know this is the lay of the land. When I would go to MEA weekend, I would bring all that stuff back to my classroom and give it directly to my students. This is what so-called psychologists and professionals are saying about you as young people. What do you think about that, right? On the back end of that, so I'm telling them this is the lay of the land. You can be you if you want, and it's going to limit. There are pieces and sacrifices that we may have to make, and it's not right, it's not good. I think about my grandfather. My grandfather grew up in Memphis, Tennessee in the 1930s and 40s. He was a very outspoken man. very proud and dignified man. And he bit his tongue. Not literally, but figuratively, right? People would call him outside of his name. People would disrespect him. His choice was to keep his nose clean and keep his head down. My father was born because my grandfather lived. Now my father said, I'm not my grandfather. I'm not doing the same thing. So my dad became a Black Panther. He was a radical, right? I think I mentioned that earlier. My dad shouted at the police. Stomped, rioted, picketed, all the stuff that you do when you don't feel like you have a voice or you have a way to be heard. I sit at the table with the people that my ancestors used to yell at. I now dialogue with. So I hear it and I understand it, and so I give the young people tools to fight the battles on their level. But I'm going upstream. I got y'all's back. I'm going over here and I'm going to deal with these big monsters myself, right? So I'm not saying you got to tell kids the truth. People are not going to like you in this particular country because of how you were born. My existence feels like a threat to everybody else, right? But if nobody ever told me that, I'd be wondering, like, when I look at the music videos or I look at TV, I'm supposed to get everything that everybody else is getting, right? But I'm not. Why? And blah, 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 blah. One last thing, and I'll get to you. School dropout rates. Has anyone really thought about why kids are dropping out of school at such high rates? Because they're smart. They're smart. This institution was not designed for me. This isn't me. They're not talking about anything that's important to me. So I'm out. I'm gonna go do something that makes sense for where I am. So if Target wasn't selling a lamp, they wouldn't blame the consumers for not buying the lamp. What would they do? They change the lamp. They stop selling a lamp and get a lamp that the consumers want, right? So no. I feel you. I think in this generation we may be doing our young people a disservice by not telling them the truth about what's going on, right? No, you wear dreads, you wear your pants sagging, you have your stuff tatted. Know that this is how people are going to. It's not right, it's not fair, but this is how they're going to look at you. And this is how they're going to treat you. So I want you to know that. And while you know that, while you're discovering that, you're learning that, I'm going upstream and saying, no, you can't treat these kids like this because of this, that, and the other thing. What does that have to do with anything? Blah, 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 blah. Right? So I'm going to take your hand and then yours. Thank you so much for offering this conversation to us. I appreciate that.
And I do have something else, but I want to hear what.
Yes, ma'am.
It's the relevance of historical trauma, and I think sometimes the historical trauma piece really did what called my grandmother's hands. They haven't read it.
No, I haven't read it.
And the idea that sometimes I think I see young people who are like, that's my culture. And I go, since when? There's no cultural relevance to you saying your pants. I'm sorry, I'm not, you have to convince me of that. Pull your damn pants up, because I don't want to see your butt or your underwear. Pull them up. Now, they'll say, I can do whatever I want. You're right, but you're black and you're kid. And I'm sorry that sounds like I'm being a jerk, but that is the reality of the world. So if you want to do that at home, you want to do it with your friends, if this is the reality of the world. And I just had a client who he is adopted and has 2 Caucasian parents, and even though he's very, very fair, you still look at him and you just know. And he had a run with the police and got real disrespectful with them because they were telling him that he could take his cell phone. And Jack's he smarted off him and disrespectful him. It's like, they can't do this, they can't do that. So when I had him alone, I was like, let's have a real, we're gonna take the therapy hat on. Because that was scary, and we needed to have a real conversation. And this was the first time in his 14 years, he needed to have that conversation about, young man, you are a young person. And that is dangerous to do, being a young man of color. You may have rights, great, but before you start exercising your lips, I need you to put your hands up first, so he knows where your hands are, and I need you to hear what he has to say. Because I don't turn on the TV and see you on the TV.
Trust me, I deeply understand. I'm the last person who has to tell that to you. My thing, and what maybe I didn't communicate myself well, we're all adults in this room. And we're the ones, whether we like it or not, that are a lot of times having to advocate for these communities.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason why I was like, oh, I disagree with you, yes, I get it with the saying of the hand. But it's easy to nitpick at things minorities do, minority teenagers, minority children, that it's seen as normal or as a phase when white kids do it. So we need to sometimes just have that empathy and meet them at the level of their kids. But I feel, for me, how I took it, I felt like that was missing when I was hearing you, and I needed to be like, whoa.
Yeah, no,
we can't keep code switching.
Yeah.
And I'm tired of code switching.
No, well,
and so are a lot of people. So, and I know it's a survival. No, I know. But I want to be like the generation that stops with. You know, we have to make we have to make things happen instead of every generation, every few years, be like, this is how you get by. This is how you get by. For real change to happen, we have to check ourselves.
You are absolutely right, and it is going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen in my lifetime, but I also didn't think that Barack Obama would be president in my lifetime. So there's that. Yeah, I like to. Okay, cool. So we have ended on like a really great note. We're 7 minutes over, and I appreciate that. But one thing I do want you to think about is the compassion of being what it means to be human, and what are people after? They're after safety, significance, and belonging. Your words, your intentions, your demeanor will be measured by the impact, but your intent is important, particularly if you have a relationship. And if you help people get their safety, significance, and belonging, you have a friend for life. So thank you so much. Have a great I want you to do it. I'm in your corner. I'm just saying. This is how.
There's no cheers. With the staff that you like sit on the chairs.
Oh, yeah.
What? You don't like that? No, we just have to basketball.
Yeah. Make sure we'll take one of those hands. When are you going to use it? Yeah.
I saw the better dress.
In professional, employers, if you study on a group, it's shame so large group.
But here's the thing.
It's true, you know what?
Here's the thing. Right? I don't know where you guys are.
I'm all for it. I'm all for it. And
I've seen changes. I didn't say a particular group of kids. People took a particular group of kids. But white kids are saying too.
But that's what it wants up. That's cultural appropriation. But it has a huge impact on youth and after a lot of people in the eyes that it's not a question called me. I had people fucking compare that. Yeah. Because
what they heard you say is, yeah, you guys are right. Tell those black boys to pull up their pants and all this.
Because
and
that's
the
not no
we work for.
And we're trying to make room for ourselves in this agency to talk about it. Yes, we may not have room for how we dress or what we bring to the table, but we're going to need you to be clean for how we are. And so right now, this is just what we're just like currently this is working on.
Yeah.
And so for you to stand after and kind of like, for you to make it in a while, you need to quick switch and make that.
No, I will not.
Except that's what
how
you
it
say.
really came up, you know, and I know that was your intent.
for me.
Except you're standing in a stage on a
But
platform. And that's a power you have in that
Yeah,
context.
but again, I will say, I have friends who have kept it real, right? Who don't know how, haven't code switched. And I think they have delightful lives. It is not a life goal stuff for me. Right now, I have nephews. Remember I was talking about my nephew?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm keeping it real. Yeah, that's my baby mama. I'm keeping it real, right? No, dude, you're not keeping it real. What you are is you kind of fit the real, right? I don't even know the baby's mind. I'm gonna wait till I get a blood test and all of that. Slow down. Deep breath. Back away from it, right? No, I'm keeping it real. I'm keeping it real. She da 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 da. I hear you. So he wanted to start some kind of protest or something back around him, and something needed to be addressed, right? So I said to him, instead of doing this video with you, now listen to this. Sounds good.
Your name's Andre, right?
Listen.
So Andre, trust me, as I was saying, I hear you. Like, this is my young friend. But I'm not dumb. I know that I'm seen as a weapon, but I'm less as a threat. Look at how I sound. I work in Tucson, South Dakota. So every time I go, I have to advocate for people that are seen as more of a threat than I am. And I'm the oldest of 8. I have 5 brothers. Even though they carry themselves as well as they may not even get the opportunity. So I feel like since we are in rooms like this, you are in a place of authority. We have to say, even if somebody looks like this, they are not a threat.
And they're welcome in the market. Yeah. Why can't you want to put gender something when it comes to something? I don't understand what that has to do with productivity. I have no clue. For me, I think it's fashionable, but on my values as art and fashion, so for me, it's valuable, but I just think in the context of you being a successful Black man, I think the things that you say to have power, and I don't think you're allowed to say negative things in public spaces. I'm sorry, I'm taking permission over from you. But I know it's true, it's real. If we don't protect our kids, we have to try and save them as much as we can, which is unfair. It's not fair, but they're going to make a system so that to get that. They're going to lose them, and then we're going to lose them, and they're doing that. But it's not us, it's the system itself. It's different from us, which is destroying their lives. All I'm saying is, having to do like second times, had to cop to the side.
That's a normal teenage phase.
Yes.
I had lots of grown ups.
Yeah, or even adults, yeah.
It's my generation that started that, right?
I feel like it was before you. And it actually started in jail. It started in prison.
Oh, I thought it started in guns and tying guns?
No, it started in prison for actually men to let other men know they were down to have sexual relations. That's where sagging started. And I think it started before your generation.
So my generation was in the 80s. So right after breaking. So I'm old. I'm really old. And but at any rate, and that's neither here nor there.